All right, everyone, I am officially back. And thanks for your patience. It's a little bit later than I said it would be when we started this, when I was going to start this. It's about 7:17 Mountain Standard Time. I hope you can forgive me. We'll give a little bit of time for people to connect here and to join. But this is going to be another excellent Q&A. I thought I better introduce myself. All right, we got someone on board here. Joel, welcome. I thought I better introduce myself a little bit. I've been kind of hovering around the Facebook, our Express Entry Law Facebook page, trying to answer questions as much as possible. I think I've been irritating some people because I haven't been able to answer everyone's question, but I just wanted to identify that we are over 23,000 people now on the Express Entry Law Facebook page. And not all of your comments and feeds appear really easily. Like I have to search for them sometimes. When people comment, then Facebook shuffles some of the comments, the threads up higher and ranks them higher. And so it's hard for me to see who I haven't responded to. But I've been trying my very hardest. All right, so who am I? Well, my name is Mark Holthe. I am a Canadian immigration lawyer. And I've been doing that for, 14, 15 years now. Prior to that, I was an immigration officer. I worked on the border as an immigration officer when I was going through law school. And prior to that, I was a high school teacher. So, lawyer, immigration officer, teacher, doing these Facebook Live videos is right up my alley, as we say here in Canada. It's a perfect fit for me. And when you get to do something that you love, that you absolutely love, well, it's not really work anymore. And that's how I feel about this. If I could do this every day and just answer people's questions and do nothing else, I would be completely fulfilled. Professionally, I would want nothing more. But unfortunately, these Facebook Live videos are more what I would call a labor of love. In other words, I don't really get paid a lot to do them. Ultimately, what I'm funneling through this is my Express Entry course. And once again, as I talk about this, this course right here is what is sponsoring, if you will, all these videos. And so I created it to help justify the time that I'm putting in here. So rather than being able to, trying to answer everyone's question, lots of people have very specific questions that I can't answer for free. The only way I can spread my time out and my knowledge and experience with as many people as possible is to do it through our Facebook, Express Entry Law Facebook page by answering questions. And as I'm starting to realize the numbers increase more and more on our group is by creating these Express Entry Live Q&A Facebook videos so that I can share the knowledge with as many people as possible. And some people were complaining, and I'm just going to take this off, some people were complaining in some of the comments that I wasn't doing a good job of answering and I was taking too long. Well, I need you to understand that I am married, I have a wife, I have children. It's 7:20 p.m. right now. They're all at home wondering when I'm coming home. And during the day, I actually have to work as a lawyer to pay the bills and to keep the lights on. And so as much as I'd love to answer everyone's questions, especially those who ask specific questions, I just can't do it. It's not possible. So I try to answer general questions that will be as useful to as many people as possible. So you can imagine answering the same question over and over to 23,000 people. Well, that's going to take quite a bit of time. But if I answer it once, even through this Express Entry Live Q&A, then all those 23,000 people can read it. So that's what I'm trying to do, to get the maximum reach, to share my knowledge with as many people as possible. And as you're watching these threads, these questions that people ask, you can see the answers are all over the place. And there are so many well-meaning people who have had an experience that's just their own with the process, and then they share that experience with that person who looks like they're having the same experience. In other words, that they come from the same background. Maybe they have the same occupation. Maybe they come from the same country. And so it's wonderful when people can share their own experiences. But one of the things I'm finding is that just because you've had a certain experience with the government doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else is going to have the same experience. So what I try to do is pull back to the actual regulations, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and the regulations, the ministerial instructions that actually drive express entry. So I try to always source back to that when I'm giving my answers. And obviously, I've had experience submitting, well, more express entry applications than I'd like to even think about. And so I pull those experiences in. But there's a ton of people within our group that are just amazing. They're so kind. They share their information freely. And so I want to thank you for that. Now, for those who are just tuning in, you'll see up here, Express Entry Live, EE Live Q&A, and then here is my firm email address. If you would like to contribute a question for future Q&As, this is how you do it. You send me an email to this, and you put this in the subject line. I get so many emails a day, hundreds of emails a day. When it comes time to prepare for the Q&A, I do a search in the subject line for this, EE space live space Q&A, and that's how I pull up the questions. All right, so I want to thank you once again for joining me, and like I said before, this is sponsored by my Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself. And because many of you I know cannot afford my legal fees, which essentially if you want a consultation with me, you have to pay $200 Canadian plus GST, which is the 5% that the Alberta government requires me to charge. But it's about $210 for a 30-minute consult. And then if it goes longer than that, then I charge prorated about $40 for every 6 minutes. And so that's my hourly rate, $400 an hour. And the firm that I'm at requires that I charge that. But because I know many of you can't afford that, that's why I created the Express Entry Live step-by-step guide. It's exactly for you. And it's in a video format. I walk you through every step. So thanks to the Canadian Immigration Institute and the Express Entry course who sponsors this. So I'd encourage all of you to purchase it. But we'll leave that for a separate discussion as well. Okay, let's jump into the questions. Actually, Kamran Ali here says, kindly let me know why I need lawyer or agents. If I know I can do it on my own, what's pro and con? Well, you know what, Kamran? I'm going to hold that question as much as you want me to answer right now. And I'm going to dedicate a special Q&A to the pros and cons of hiring someone to represent you. I've got a few things planned that are really important for this Q&A, but I promise, Cameron, I will answer that in a next special Q&A that I'll host somewhere between now and the next Q&A that I'm going to hold next Thursday. So if you're okay with that, great. Thanks for understanding. Okay, let's jump in here. I'm going to try a few new things here because I want to make this more interactive so you don't have to look at this ugly mug here and to give you something else to look at. But the first question that I have comes from Bindu. And he says, hi, Mark. How to calculate the CRS for FSW, some of the agencies saying we should score 67 points to be eligible. Okay, I understand the confusion here. I really do. So what Bindu is asking here, he's kind of mixing up the comprehensive ranking system with the eligibility assessment for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So if you've spent any time looking into Express Entry, in the old days, prior to Express Entry, so prior to January the 1st, 2015, anyone who wasn't in Canada and wanted to immigrate had to go through the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the Federal Skilled Trade Program. But we'll focus on the FSW, the Federal Skilled Worker Program, because that's the question that Bindu asked me. So in those days, if you met the eligibility requirements, then you could apply and you could immigrate to Canada. There was no such thing as Express Entry. And what that meant was many, many people were able to qualify, and then their applications just sat in the queue. And they sat for a long time. In fact, some people in some countries had to wait up to 7 years to get their permanent resident application processed. Well, that was just simply unpalatable. It wasn't acceptable by the people applying, nor the Canadian government, nor Citizenship and Immigration Canada at the time. So they decided something had to change. So instead of allowing people to just apply if they met the requirements, instead they superimposed or put in front of in front of the federal skilled worker program, they put express entry in. And basically they created a pool and a ranking system. So all of you submit your profiles into the express entry pool, you swim around for a little while, and you hope that when a draw happens, that your ranking is going to be higher than the other people that are in the pool, or at least high enough to get pulled out. And so that comprehensive ranking system is what Bindu is referring to, but he's mixing it up with the federal skilled worker program. So what does this mean? What is he talking about? Well, it comes all down to what you require or what you have to have in order to qualify for the federal skilled worker program. And there were some changes that occurred. And so right off the bat, any person who wants to immigrate to Canada through the express entry process, and they're going through the federal skilled worker program, has to have at least 1 year of skilled work experience before they can even apply. So you could have super high language scores. You could have the perfect age. You're 28 years old. Your language is off the charts. You've got a PhD, and you are just educated to the hilt. Well, unless you have at least 1 year of skilled work experience, you can't even get through the door. So that's the first thing, is 1 year skilled work experience. Then the next level is your language. You cannot apply unless you have at least a CLB7, a Canadian Language Benchmark Level 7. And on many of the threads on the Express Entry Law Facebook page, I provided links back and back to the equivalency charts so that you can equate your IELTS score, your IELTS language score, to the CLB. But I'll leave that for a different discussion. So the minimum threshold is a CLB7. So if you have those first two, then it falls to these selection criteria. And for the federal skilled worker program, it's similar to the factors, the human capital factors that the comprehensive ranking system, it's similar to that, but it's just a little different. So this is where the questions come about 67 points. Well, the federal skilled worker program has its own point system, its own qualification requirements, and it's out of a total of 100, as compared to the express entry system that uses a 1,200 point total scheme. And so the federal skilled worker program breaks down certain number of points, in fact, a maximum of 28 points for English or French, depending on which one is your primary language. Then they give you a maximum of 25 points for education. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the full breakdown of each of these factors. But work experience, 15 points. Age, 12 points. Arranged employment in Canada, 10 points. And finally, adaptability is 10 points. So each of those selection criteria that they use to calculate the points for the federal skilled worker program, you have to separately calculate those, and the pass mark for the federal skilled worker program is always 67. At least it has never changed for years and years. And in fact, that's one of the problems. That's why the program ballooned up to 600,000 people in the queue, was because they had set the pass mark at 67. It used to be 75 years and years ago, but then they lowered it to 67, and then all these people were qualifying. But that is still the threshold to meet the eligibility requirements for the federal skilled worker program. So if you have, let's recap, if you have 1 year of skilled work experience, you have at least a CLB7 for your language, whichever it is, English or French, and you have at least 67 points within the criteria, the selection factors that the federal skilled worker program has, then you're eligible to submit your application into the express entry pool. And then once you're in the pool, that's when the comprehensive ranking system kicks in with all of those rounds of invitations, the maximum total of 1,200 points, which no one I don't think has ever reached that high. But right now, as of yesterday, that pass mark was 413. That's where the rounds of invitations was cut off. I should say that's where the comprehensive ranking system score was set. So hopefully that answers the question. And I know I took a little bit more time, but Bindu, I wanted you to understand because you were kind of mixing it up. So you need to have 67 points to meet the minimum eligibility requirements for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. If you do that, then you can enter into the express entry pool. All right. Next on my list here. So that covers that one. Thank you, Bindu. Woo! See you later. All right. Next one is Bindesh. And Bindesh, this is the question. Dear Sir, I hope this email finds you well. I would like to request you help me with a query as below. All right. My employer doesn't pay me in bank account and neither provide us a pay slip. And I'm going to read these exactly as they are. I'm just, people speak English at different levels and they write at different levels. And you know what? We're all learning. I spent 2 years in Portugal trying to puzzle out the Portuguese language. And I know my written Portuguese wasn't spectacular. After 2 years, I worked really hard and my spoken Portuguese was not too bad. But writing is tough. So bear with me as I read it exactly as it's written. So I would like to request you help me with a query as below. My employer doesn't pay me in bank account and neither provide us a pay slip. Therefore, can you advise what would be the best option here? He is happy to provide a letter for the same. Waiting for your optimistic response. Kind regards, Bindesh. All right. Bindesh, here's the answer. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. And the reason is because you're asking a question about work experience, really. I think that's what you're asking. And if you are given an invitation to apply and you are required to submit proof of work experience, it doesn't ask for you to provide pay stubs. Now, you'll see a reference to, if you're in Canada, maybe providing a T4 or tax documents confirming employment income. But for the purposes of express entry, they actually don't ask for that. And what they do ask for, and I'm going to pull this up here, what they do ask for is detailed information about your job. And if you're to go to the completeness check website, or I should say the web page within the IRCC website, and I will put a link to that within the comment section of this video. So if I forget, and I did last time, if I forget, remind me, but I'm going to try to put a link to the completeness check site. And that's where it gives the specific instructions that you will also find in the electronic application for permanent residence document checklist. And it'll tell you exactly what you need. And so for the purposes of work experience, it says that the following documents are mandatory. So people who don't have this and can't provide it are going to be in danger of getting your application refused. Now, sometimes you can't, and I've had previous discussions with other people about it. But the key thing that you want to focus on is this letter. And this letter is actually something that Bindesh said he could get, or she could get. He, I think. I apologize. So this is what it says. A reference letter or experience letter from the employer, which should be on official letterhead. So it's an official document. And it must contain the applicant's name, of course, the company's contact information, and then the address, telephone number, email address, and the name and title of the supervisor of the person, or someone that's a personnel officer at the company, someone who knows about the details of the job being performed by the applicant, which is you. And you also need to understand, and this is the most important part. It should indicate all the positions held while you were employed with the company, and it must include the following details. And this is the key: job title, duties and responsibilities, job status, and many people ask me what that means. Well, are you currently working there? Or if you worked previously, what was the time frame that you worked there? And that actually leads into dates worked with the company. And this is something that's often missing: the number of hours per week and the annual salary plus benefits. So why hours? Well, because that's what Immigration Canada, or IRCC, uses to determine whether or not you are actually working full-time, which is their definition of full-time, 30 hours a week or 1,560 hours per year. Okay? All right, so those specific items are what's required. Now, if you were self-employed, they also give some instructions for that, but that's not the question that Bendesh asked. So Bendesh, you're fine. Just make sure that you can provide a complete reference letter from your employer documenting all those things that I referenced. All right? Okay, so there's Bendesh. Now we're going to have some fun, and I'm going to experiment here because I want to make these good. This next question comes from Maria, and she says, if my husband is already working in Canada with a visa of 3 years and working as a mechanic, is the proof of funds still be needed if I apply for express entry visa? Thank you. And there's a couple different parts to this question. So she says if she, as the principal applicant, applies and her husband has a job, and I'm assuming as a mechanic, he probably has an LMIA supported job offer, and he's working on a work permit that's supported by an LMIA. She says, if I'm the principal applicant, can I avoid the proof of funds? And the answer is no. If you yourself, well, I shouldn't say that. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to qualify this. So hang in there. I'm going to try something. This is something that I created a little while back. I am going to try to share my screen with all of you again. And you can see here I've got a PowerPoint. And this PowerPoint, I'm going to try to blow it up. But fortunately, I have some wonderful people that are watching live. I'm going to turn it on because I need you. I'm beta testing this. I need you to let me know if you can see this when I go full screen. So let's see. I'm going to do it right now. Okay. So this is a full screen PowerPoint. You might be able to see me maybe up in the corner. I can't see my own screen, and eventually I'll figure out. I see these other guys on Facebook who do these live videos and can see themselves on their screen. I haven't figured it out yet, so that's okay. So I'm going to close this off, and what I want you to do, all you that are watching live, let me know if you can see the first page of my PowerPoint that has my ugly mug on the front of it, and it says EE Live Q&A Express Entry Tips, and then hosted by Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer. I'm going to shrink it. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you can see it. So any of you that are watching live, were you able to see that? Because if you were, then I'll pull it back up and I'll continue forward. So I'm just going to sit here and wait for some feedback from Jatinder or Karam or Santi. Were you guys able to see it? Okay, good. There's the thumbs up. Ah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to put it back up and then I'm going to keep talking. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about this whole proof of funds thing so that people understand. So the question, how do I establish proof of funds? And what document do I need to include if I don't have enough money in my bank account? So I'm going to take it one step further than what Maria asked. But in the case of Maria, I'll show you here. Once we talk about this, then I'll explain whether it works or not. So right off the bat, and this goes to the heart of Maria's question, are you even required to provide proof of settlement funds? So that's the question. So what do we look at? Well, when are settlement funds not required? Right off the bat, if you are granted an ITA under the Canadian Experience class, then you don't have to. And so if I look at Maria's situation, there's a good chance that she accumulated her work experience probably as well as her husband. If her husband's been working for 3 years and working as a mechanic, Maria was probably eligible for an open work permit during that time, and maybe she has Canadian work experience. So if she has at least 1 year of Canadian work experience, then, and the high a level of English language, CLB 7 if she's working at a skill level A or O, and a CLB 5 if she's been working at a skill level B, then she qualifies under the Canadian Experience class. So in that case, Maria, it would have nothing to do with your husband, actually. But if you qualify into the Canadian Experience class, then you don't need to provide proof of funds. And the other situation is if you have an arranged offer of employment. And you'll remember, as of the changes last fall that happened with Express Entry, the nature of an arranged offer of employment, it's changed. So no longer is it just those people that have an LMIA. It also includes other people who are under the International Mobility Program, which includes anyone who has a work permit that has a named employer on it. So all of you open people, and in the case of Maria, if you're on a spousal open work permit, then you wouldn't be able to get an arranged offer of employment from the company you're working for unless they actually went and got an LMIA for you, a labor market impact assessment. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the labor market impact assessment, it's the process where a Canadian company has to actually advertise the position and provide a wage that is competitive, we call it the prevailing wage rate, for the position to Canadians and permanent residents before they can offer the job to one of you, a foreign national. And they submit the application to ESDC, which is one of the government bodies that administers the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. And if they accept the fact there's no Canadian or permanent resident that can do the job, then they will give the employer an LMIA, which the foreign national can then use to get a work permit. But in the case of anyone who's here on a truly open work permit, including post-grad work permits, because they're open and not employer-specific, then you can't get an arranged offer of employment to get that additional 50 points that are awarded for that. But if you do have an arranged offer of employment, then you don't need to provide settlement funds, and that's whether you're in Canada or not. And there's so many different possibilities and permutations of this scenario based on people's individual circumstances, but that's the basic rule. So the question then comes, well, it's a lot of money. And what if I don't have enough money? And I'm just looking here to see. I'm going to jump right to here. So what if you don't have the funds? And look at here. So if it was Maria and just her husband, they didn't have any other children, they'd have to show, and if she had to provide proof of funds, she'd have to show that she had $15,312. This is the current low income cutoff. And so I'll back up here. Okay. So if you are given an ITA, what does the government want you to provide? Well, this is it. So you must provide, and this is what it says right on the completeness check website that the officers use when they're determining if your application is complete, your electronic application for permanent residence. They must provide an official letter issued by the financial institution, which must list all your bank and investment accounts, your account numbers, the date each account was opened, and the balance in each account over the past 6 months. So I hear all of these different discussions within the Express Entry Law Facebook group about what you need to provide for proof of funds. Well, this is exactly what the government asks you to provide. And so you must provide an official letter issued by the financial institution, and this is an addition, which must list, so this is the letter itself, okay? It must list all outstanding debts, such as credit cards and loans. It must be printed on letterhead of the financial institution, include your name, your contact information, address, telephone, and email. So that's of the financial institution. And so then the question becomes, well, if I don't have this $15,000, or if you've got a large family, up to $32,000, and remember, this is all in Canadian dollars, then what do? Where does the money come from? Well, can I get help for my family is what a lot of people ask me. And the reality is, if you're receiving money from family, it must be an irrevocable gift, so not a loan. And that's really what it comes down to. It can't be show money that your family just sticks in your bank account and then pulls it out once you get your permanent residence. It's supposed to be an irrevocable gift if it comes from family. So how do you establish that? How do you prove that? Well, if your bank account, let's face it, if it shows this large deposit in your account, then you need to be able to explain where it came from. And if it's a gift from family, or maybe you sold some property, well, that would justify where the money came from. Then you need to explain it. And if it came from family, then often we'll get a statutory declaration from them confirming that, yes, I gave the money to my family member to support them in their their dream of going to Canada to immigrate. And so, what does that stat dec need to look like? And these are just examples, folks. You could have any number of different ways of doing this. It doesn't have to be this. But these are some things that are really going to help you if you're stuck in this situation. So the date and the amount of the funds that were transferred, the account numbers for you and your family member who gifted the money to you, because they want to make sure that these funds are not, well, they're not proceeds of crime. In other words, that they don't come to you through illegal means or something like that. And then if there's wires from one bank account to another, I'll include the reference numbers. And then confirming very clearly that this is an irrevocable gift, and I would use that language, and not a loan. All right, so here's some other tips. You can collectively use a bunch of bank accounts if you need to. I've had some people ask me whether or not a spouse with their own private account can be used to support proof of funds within a family group. And I'll be honest with you, I have not seen anyone do that at this stage. Now, some of you may have done it and it might have been successful, but I'm always really nervous and really leery to do that. So I tell my clients, why not transfer the funds into a joint account? A joint account is perfectly fine. Or even if the spouse, heck, they're your spouse. I've been married over 20 years. And my wife and I, we have shared accounts. But in some countries, maybe that's not possible. But regardless, I always try to make sure that the funds are always in the name of the principal applicant. It might have worked for you. You might have been able to do it through another means. But if you have to use multiple accounts, that's okay. But I'd make sure that the account that you're using isn't one that's just your spouse. All right. Okay, so here's another thing. If you have enough in one bank account, well, that's fine. You don't need to provide letters from all of your bank accounts to show that you have $500,000. All you need to do is meet the minimum settlement funds. And why are they asking you to have settlement funds? Well, it's because you aren't already working in Canada. That's the Canadian Experience Class program. And you don't already have a job lined up. That's the arranged offer of employment. So if you don't have that, then you need money to get settled. And if you talk to anyone who might be on this Express Entry Law Facebook group that's already gone through the process, it's not always easy to get yourself established in Canada. And so that money that you have stored is going to help you, and the government of Canada has set it at a level that they feel will help you to get your feet underneath you, find a job, get settled, rent a place to live, and essentially start your new life in Canada without the stress of wondering if you're going to be able to buy groceries for your family. Okay? Now, one thing I do want to point out, if you have debts in other accounts and you're kind of concealing those debts, and really your debts, your liabilities are greater than your assets, well, that could cause you a problem if the government wanted to ask more information. But at the end of the day, just be aware of that. And then, one of the final tips I'll give you is that you can't use a property valuation. Because property valuations are so unpredictable, and sometimes they're so inflated, you can't use a property valuation as proof of funds. You actually need to liquidate the property and show that those are unencumbered funds. They're funds that are available to be used in Canada without any restriction. And then, like I said before, you can't borrow the funds. You can't take a loan out. That doesn't work for the purposes of Canadian immigration. And so, folks, that pretty much wraps up the Q&A for today. But I want to put in one last little plug again for my little course. And all of these tips I'm giving you, all of these instructions, even this little PowerPoint that I showed you today, is all sourced within my Canadian Immigration Institute Express Entry Do-It-Yourself guide. And I charge $39 US for a month subscription. And for most of you, especially if your scores are high enough, you can probably get in and out and complete your profile, get drawn with an ITA, and submit your electronic application for permanent residence in a month. And I poured all of my knowledge, all of my experience, everything into that. And I walked you through step by step how to do the whole process from start to finish. So this isn't just a tell you how to do it like we're doing essentially on the Express Entry Law Facebook page, or going to the Immigration Canada website where you're pouring through all of these resources trying to figure it out, spending hours and hours and hours. And it's not like going to the immigration forums that are on the internet and sorting through all of these threads trying to puzzle things out. I literally walk you through step by step. You could probably do the whole thing, and you could submit your profile probably in under an hour almost. And it's all geared towards single people that are not married. There's sections that apply to married and those with kids, and I cover everything off. So those who have taken the course and who have subscribed, and every day I get new subscribers that are subscribing, not one person has said it was a waste of money. And in fact, I need to get you guys on here telling the other people. And the reason that I do all of this, and I'm going to shut this down so that I can see myself and know that everybody is still on here. Let's see if I can close it out. There. The reason that I do it is because as a Canadian immigration lawyer, it kills me that there's so many people out there who are trusting their lives with people that have taken a series of evening courses and that's the extent of their experience. So they've taken some courses, declare themselves an immigration consultant, and then are advising people about their lives. And because they're your fellow countrymen or they're people that have fancy, slick websites, there's this tendency to trust them. And I knew that my fees are often out of reach of a lot of you. I charge $5,000 Canadian to represent someone fully, a full concierge service from start to finish. I charge $5,000 Canadian plus all the immigration processing fees, other disbursements. And so I know my fees are expensive, but they're that way for a reason, because of my expertise, because of the time I've put in, because of the countless hours sitting on Canadian Bar Association immigration executive committees, drafting submissions to the government on the creation of Express Entry, and spending hours and hours every day servicing clients just like you. And it's supply and demand. When you have many, many people wanting your services, it doesn't make sense to lower your rate. Your rate actually increases. So that's where I'm at. But I don't believe in being a money-grubbing lawyer. That's why I wanted to create this, so that I could help so many more people on a global scale. That's why I created the course. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I'll put a comment, a link to it in the comment section, and it has all my knowledge. So I welcome any feedback. I appreciate everybody that has been sharing comments. And, for those of you who have been on here watching live, I really appreciate it. I'm contemplating changing the time. And so I think what I'll do is put up maybe a survey on our Express Entry Law Facebook page just to see if people want me to switch the time. And so at the end of the day, if I need to change this to a time that's a little bit better, and you can see the sun starting to come down on my computer here, the sun's starting to get lower because it's getting closer to the evening. It's just about 8 o'clock now. I will change it. If I need to come in earlier for to accommodate you guys, then I'll do that. All right. Now, those who were kind enough to be on the post, let's see here if I can answer some of these. Okay, does this tutorial program help if my CRS score is below 350? I'll honestly say probably not, because the likelihood of you ever being able to qualify, if indeed your CRS score is 350, is really low. But I'll tell you something about it. One thing that I do have inside it is how to improve your chances of qualifying. So I shouldn't say that it's not useful, because in there I give you tips and strategies on how to increase your score if it's not yet high enough. And so from that standpoint, I tried to accommodate for everyone. People that didn't yet have enough CRS points, to people that were all ready to go and hit the pavement running and didn't want to waste time and wanted to pound right through the whole thing from start to finish, knowing that they weren't missing anything. So I designed it for everybody, for families, for individuals, for students, for foreign workers in Canada, for people, foreign nationals outside of Canada, professionals, trade level people, everyone. And so I created it with a series of short little video tutorials, and so you can pick and choose the ones that you want. So Cameron, I'll tell you, maybe you're at 350 now, but there may be some things that you can do to increase your chances. So so for $39 US, it may very well be worth it for you to understand exactly what it takes and what you can do, because there might be some ideas in there to help you. All right. Okay. Akshay said, please share info about self-employed person. Okay. Well, this one's kind of tricky. And I think in this Q&A, because it's gone so long, self-employed is a little bit more difficult. For all intents and purposes, you can still consider work experience that's self-employed, but you have to provide other third-party evidence to support your actual work experience, because you writing a letter for yourself is kind of self-serving. So there are some things that you can do, and I will cover that in future Q&As. So I apologize. It's a whole new area that I'd have to cover, and so we'll let that one for next time. Okay. Let's see. I think for the time being, maybe that's probably good. But thank you guys for sticking it out with me. I really appreciate it. And I love this. This is my life. And I'm just so grateful for all of you for tuning in. And I know there's so many more people that watch this. In fact, there's probably almost 2,000 people that watch these as they're recorded, which tells me I probably need to choose a different time to do it. And so anyways, thank you. I did want to also point out one other thing, because every once in a while I get people who, well, they're pretty demanding, and they send me emails and get mad when I don't respond. Please understand, if you're sending me an email and you're asking me to assess your qualifications for express entry, that is something that I charge for. So when people post all of their, they'll send me an email, they'll attach their, reference letters, their educational credentials, their resumes, and they'll say, do I qualify? Well, understand that's something that I charge for. So as an immigration lawyer, that's where I charge the $210. In a 30-minute consult, I can answer all of your questions related to express entry, but I have to charge that consultation fee. And then ultimately, if you choose to engage me and hire me as your lawyer, then we treat our clients like family here. And I charge $5,000 Canadian in legal fees alone to represent people. So I know many of you can't afford it. And that's why I've got this guide right here. And I wish people would just dive in and just see, because I poured my heart and soul into it. Anyways, thank you so much once again. And please accept my apologies. If you do send an email that's specific, even though you put EE Live Q&A in the subject line, if it says, how do I qualify or something like that, then every one of those emails I forward to my assistant, Charlene, who then sends you a consult request and explains that it's $200. Or if you want to meet with Billy, who's my right arm, my support here in the office. She was an ex-immigration officer as well, and she's a certified immigration consultant, except she's got like 13 years of experience working as an actual immigration officer processing applications. You can book a consult with either of us. Her fee is half mine, but we're available. But understand, please don't get offended if that's what happens, if I do forward it. And if you send a question in to me, please don't get offended as well if I can't get to it. I do the best I can to choose the questions that I think are going to be the most use. And you can see we're already just about 45 minutes here into this, and there's a lot to cover. So hopefully you're patient with me. Thanks so much. It was an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best as you navigate this crazy world of Canadian Express entry. Take care.